Shane, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
You got a cup of mud. I got a cup of mud, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah.
You're local, it's 2020. So we're, as far as the bird flies, probably a few miles from each other. One day,
Remote
look to do
neighbors.
this. Yeah. I want to start with a random question and then we'll dig into mud, but was looking through your website, your personal site, and said on your to-do list is a surf trip to El Salvador. Has that happened pre-COVID or is that still in the works?
It did happen. It happened pre-COVID, and it wasn't just a surf trip, it was a team trip.
Oh,
So we
wow.
brought the
Let's hear about it.
we brought the whole team down to an area of coastline in El Salvador called El Tunco or El Zonte. It was a little bit of a self-serving trip because I really wanted to go on a surf trip, and most of the people on my team don't surf, but they were excited about it. I grew up in Santa Cruz, and I'm a little like spoiled in that sense. Like surfing in Los Angeles is not that exciting for me. So when I'm thinking about doing team trips, we have a remote team. So we're always trying to, do fun things when we do meet up. I'm like, I want to go surf, and I can take people surfing, but it turns out El Zonte in El Salvador isn't the best spot for beginners. The beaches are all rocky and it's amazing waves, but like it's a little extreme. And so we had I think I traumatized a couple of employees on the trip.
When did you guys go? Is this recent?
We went in November last year. Yeah, so
What's the vibe down there? We had gone a few years ago. I'm a extremely average surfer. I grew up in Colorado mostly and a little North Carolina, so more of a skier.
yeah.
But we had gone down years ago, and El Salvador, as far as Central America goes, was still a little dicey, a little rough on at times. What's the sentiment now? Is it still?
Yeah, I think you just have to keep your wits about you and be careful. We were staying in a smaller little village, beach town, everything like no problems at all. I think it does have a reputation, which is probably good for for any like traveler tourist coming through, just to like be alert, don't be an idiot, don't go get drunk and walk around at night and with your wallet hanging out. But yeah, we had no problems. We stayed at an amazing hotel. It was great, like no complaints. It was a very raw experience. I really like doing those types of things with the team, not like checking into an all-inclusive in like Cabo, but going somewhere where we get to see a little bit of culture, get out of our comfort zone. So yeah, man, it was awesome. And we recently we were supposed to go pre-COVID, during COVID actually, like March 15th, we had a trip planned to Costa Rica, Santa Teresa, which is a place that I went on a solo trip to like last year around this time. And but yeah, we had to shut that down and we postponed the trip, but we just got back from Yellowstone. So
Wait,
as a team,
when were you there? We may have crossed paths. We just when things went sideways in LA, we packed up the car, wife and 3-year-old child, left it open-ended because 3-year-old child in the equation wasn't quite sure how he was going to do in these long drives, but had family in Colorado, and then he did wonderfully. So we said, let's just keep going. So we went up to Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and back. When would you guys have been there?
We were there August 18th. Yeah.
Yeah, about the same time.
Yeah,
probably
for
past
like
each
5
other
days.
on the trail somewhere.
It's so beautiful there. It's great.
What'd you guys get
awesome
into?
time. We did so we flew in, we went to a rodeo, first rodeo.
Cody?
Brought the team. What's that?
Did you go in Cody? Where'd you go?
It was in West Yellowstone. So we stayed at a place called Under Canvas in West Yellowstone. These like amazing glamping setups, and we all got dressed up. We thought we were going to this like huge stadium rodeo. Like none of us are. We shouldn't have been wearing what we were wearing, like cowboy hats and the whole like deal. And then we go to this rodeo, and it's like a small time 200 person, just like legit cowboy rodeo. And I felt so out of place, so uncomfortable, but it was dope, man. It was fun to watch.
Did they
crazy.
did they do mutton busting? Do you know what that is?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, it was
that's
the
where they
Bronco.
take they take like the little sheep, and they'll put like kids. And when I mean, they're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. They
3-year-olds,
did.
and put
They did
helmets
do
on them
that.
and let them, that's the
That was
best.
the best event. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. They had, it was mainly the bronc riding, and they did some like barrel racing, and then they did that. Yeah, the kids all ran out there. This one kid was a little stud, just smoked it.
that's
It was
great.
cool. But yeah, then
That's
we did
awesome.
some whitewater rafting. We did some horseback riding. We went to this grizzly and wolf rehabilitation center. Got to see some grizzlies up close, but behind a fence. And we went and drove around the park one day. Yeah, did some cold plunges in the creek. Did some meditations with the team. It was good, man. It was awesome.
Cool. Yeah, the West is certainly a little easier to social distance in Wyoming and Montana. All right, listeners, promise we'll actually start talking about business today. But for the people watching on YouTube, the photo in my background is actually from this trip. This is in the Flat Tops Wilderness in Colorado. We did a little 4-day or 3-day, I can't even remember at this point, horseback trip with our family.
Wow.
Marvin Lake, if you want to find it on a map, listeners. All right, so let's go back origin story. Santa Cruz, my wife is a banana slug.
Yeah.
And, we'll get into Mudwater, but arguably my favorite coffee roaster, because I came to you guys through probably a pretty traditional way people find you, is I think a Santa Cruz based roaster, Verve. Have you ever been to
Yep.
Verve?
Oh man,
Yeah.
that was the spot. I worked many a time at Verve Coffee on Mudwater.
They have a couple, yeah. Verve, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but you have a couple spots in LA that I frequent a bit. All right, so where should we start the origin story? Should it be Goa, India? Should it be San Diego? Where do you want to begin? What was the original
Yeah,
inspiration?
yeah. I mean, it goes way back, but we can start with like college days, I guess, because that I was I was studying design and art in college, but in my early years in college was surfing, like having fun. I went to San Diego State. I knew that I wanted to be in the creative field. My dad was a builder, built every home that I lived in. So he was an architect too. So I just saw like the creative process from day one and just really loved and respected, even maybe more unconsciously than consciously at that time, his skill set of being able to have a vision, put it onto paper, and then actually building it into like the physical realm. And so when I was in school, I started to love just being multifaceted in my design skills and not needing to like necessarily rely on a developer or something to get something done. So I was a multimedia major, which allowed me to study a variety of different things under the design realm. So I studied front end coding, spent a lot of time in design. I loved the design probably the most, but learned how to code, learned some interactive design, some like Pixar style modeling, and even like electronic music, video production, really full spectrum. And did an internship at an advertising agency. And I loved that too. Just got really into like the marketing side. And when graduating college, I had the opportunity to co-found a tech company from day one with no experience. I got no right to like even dive into that space. But a friend who I had done an internship with, he started a nonprofit while I was in school, and I helped him with the branding and packaging of what he was working on, and we really worked well together. And when he was getting his MBA, I think he just graduated from his MBA, and I just graduated from my undergrad, and he was like, I'm starting this company. I got a little bit of money from an ex-Facebook engineer. It was like an action sports video network, and we were both like loved surf, skate, snow, all that. And we're like, this is awesome. No business model other than like build it, get a bunch of people on it, and then monetize later. The like old school Silicon Valley model. Um, I think we had a lot of naivete that allowed us to just explore that and didn't need a ton of money at that time. I ended up moving up to Truckee with my girlfriend and was paying $300 a month in rent, like just had it cheap.
What year vintage would this have been?
This was in 2012.
Okay.
So 2012, we brought on an amazing CTO. I don't know how we convinced him to join us, but he's now like leading the development team at Amazon, some department up there. But learned a lot from him. He taught me a lot about front end coding, and I was doing the design, and we were all, it was 3 of us only. And so we were wearing tons of hats, just learning the ins and outs of business. We ended up getting like Nike as an advertising partner. That's kind of like the one thing that happened that was like kind of cool, but there was really no trajectory outside of that. But we did work on that for 2 years. Throughout that, at the latter end, we ran out of funds, and I worked on various other smaller projects just to make ends meet. Was doing website projects for various people, packaging, branding, just getting wet with every aspect of design and the startup space. After that company wound down, I moved to Silicon Valley and joined a couple of tech companies there. So this was like 2013, 14. And during that time, I was making actually some nice money finally. Nothing crazy, but I was like a senior designer, getting to work on a lot, and was training jujitsu outside of work, training CrossFit, climbing. Just I've always been really active, but at this time of my life, I loved just diving in and just exploring my physical capacity. Growing up in Santa Cruz, I was also really conscious of my diet and how my diet related to my creativity and also my output, like outside the office, like in the physical performance realm. That said, I was drinking tons of coffee. Like I thought, like in that world, it's hustle culture, like sleep when you're dead. Coffee is going to allow you to do more, do it faster. So I never really thought of it as something that I always thought of it as something that was a performance enhancer, I guess you could say. Like it was at the office, everyone was doing it. But I think being in the creative realm, specifically when I was going home and like painting after work, I was hyper aware of my mental state, because I'm constantly essentially looking at a blank sheet of paper in my mind. Like there's no like point A, point B. It's a lot more nuanced, and I'm incentivized to be creative, not necessarily incentivized to like move bricks quickly. And so I started to notice that caffeine, which I've learned later, stimulates a sympathetic response in your mind. It can stimulate your prefrontal cortex, which is your like logical, rationing, reasoning side of your mind, which isn't really beneficial to creativity. It isn't necessarily beneficial to like intuition and these types of feelings, which now in my life are really important to me. But back then I was just kind of like, I'm just not, like sometimes I'm stuck or I'm stressed or I'm anxious, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and my sleep was starting to deteriorate, like feeling a lot more anxiety throughout the day, and so I started to play with my caffeine intake, which was tough because I love that morning ritual, and I love rituals just in general. I'm a very like habitual person, and I like building those things and having triggers that allow me to jump right into flow state. So I started to explore different teas, different products that, different ways of even making coffee that could help with the caffeine jitters. Luckily around that time, I got invited to do an artist in residency program in Goa, India. So it was like a 6-month residency. I basically get to go out there, free place to stay, art studio, and have an art show. And so I took a leave of absence from work, actually never went back to that job, moved to India, and was just living in this amazing kind of like art residency right on the beach in Goa, getting to surf, eat amazing healthy food, and paint all the time.
Quick interjection. What's the surf scene like in India?
It's funny. It's like going and surfing like out in front in Venice all the time or something like that. Like it's nothing but like warm water. This place where I was staying, it's called Vayu, and it was started by a native to India who went to school in San Diego State, and ended up going to like Burning Man and Lightning in a Bottle. And he was a professional kite. He happened to move to San Diego and became a professional kite surfer. So started to fall in love with the ocean, and then started to go to these kind of transformative music festivals, and saw how these transformative music festivals, one of the underlying principles is kind of like respect for nature and like leave no trace. And they're really big on like recycling and composting and all these things. And he just saw a tie-in that India needs so much, which is influencing culture, especially youth culture, to make like love and respect for the planet cool. Like over there, you're peeing and you're throwing trash and pooping in the ocean, and because there's no relationship. Over here, we surf and we're on the beach all the time and we're active and outside, and it's a little different. Obviously, we could do a lot better ourselves, but that's why these transformative music festivals exist. And so what he did was he went back home after college and created this center, which is it's like a hotel resort, but they have surf lessons, kite surfing lessons, paddle boards, and then they have artists and musicians come, and they're trying to really build this awareness around these things amongst youth culture. So they have like a Prana Cafe, which is like this organic cafe with amazing food, and then they're recycling, composting, just kind of like teaching people over there, teaching and influencing people to have a relationship with nature, which is beautiful. So yeah.
Right. But the surf break's pretty decent. Actually, some decent breaks.
Very like whatever beach break, small. Yeah. I think during typhoon season it's really good, but it's just like raining the whole time. Everybody kind of leaves. That said, I could tell you about a surf trip maybe a little later that I did go on after Goa, in a spot in India that was just like unreal.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go back to tea. We'll catch that later. Sorry.
So yeah, I was in India. India, their coffee culture is replaced, like chai culture is their coffee culture. It's on every corner. Everybody's drinking chai, not coffee. And I started drinking chai. I loved chai going into that, and I grew more fonder of it after that, just because it's so culturally ingrained. But I think what was the even more influential aspect of that was not just like what they're drinking, but it's like what they're eating, what they're dressing, how they're speaking, what they think about, what they care about. Just getting, for the first time, it was my first time really out of North America, aware of just how different people live. And coming home from that trip, it was really empowering for me to take inventory of my life and like what I was doing in my life because I really wanted to do it, because it was internally important and it was empowering, or what I was doing just because it was like culturally prescribed to me by my parents, by my teachers, by my friends. A lot of times those things can be great, but I think it is important to like take an inventory and be like, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing this just kind of blindly? And coffee for me was an obvious one, like from the get-go. I was already kind of exploring that before India, and when I came home, it was just kind of like, I was just drinking this because everyone's doing it. This is not helping me, specifically, like me. I had no intentions of business. It was just not helping me. And so got back, moved to LA. I started another tech company. It was called Cavalry. It was an e-commerce, it was a B2B SaaS company. And we were doing personalized emails on demand, like at scale. So we had a team of writers, and we had an interface that would populate based on who you're reaching out to, with like icebreaker and a template. And so we would work with larger companies who would have like an email list of like 5,000 people they wanted to reach out to. And instead of just doing like an email blast with some mail merge personalization, they could have each email be personalized to the recipient. So the whole idea was higher response rates and all that. And at that time, working remote, I was at my house. I was exploring this chai tea that I found that had really low caffeine. So it was a masala chai blend with a little bit of black tea in it. And then just started to play around with different ingredients that had a benefit profile that matched my lifestyle. Because I viewed this, I was like, I'm going to drink this every day. I have a mug with water and I can put whatever I want into it. Like, why not make it benefit not just like my energy levels, but what if it could benefit like my physical performance or my inflammation or my mood or like my diet or appetite, all these things. I was like, this is just a vessel for so much more. And I have a pretty tolerant flavor palette. Like I was just like, if it benefits me, I can just, like whatever. So I was dumping, add some cacao for mood, and obviously cacao I think really helps with the flavor. And that allows you to kind of add in a bunch of different ingredients that maybe are less flavor tolerant. So it was like lion's mane for cognitive function, focus, cordyceps for physical performance, chaga and reishi for immunity, turmeric for inflammation. And I was doing intermittent fasting, so I added some cinnamon, which I found helped me curb my sugar cravings. And so in the end, I was just like every morning waking up, pouring in all these ingredients, and going about my day, going work at cafes, going to jiu-jitsu and friends. I was bringing this to festivals and stuff. Like this was in 2016, 15, 16. There was zero business idea here. Like this is, I'd never spent time in the kitchen. Like I was never cooking. I was like work, eat, sleep, play, paint, like didn't have time to cook. But that said, I would bring this around and friends were like, what the fuck is that? Like, and I'm like, it's mud, because it just looked sludgy. And I had these, I actually was drinking chunks of chaga, which is like the traditional way of drinking chaga, floating in all those ingredients. So it looked crazy. And it was kind of a conversation starter for a lot of people, but people's initial reaction was like, what, this is just like another one of Shane's like weird little explorations. I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but I mean, it keeps going on. Yeah. So to keep going, I'll kind of like fast forward a little bit. So that's like 2016. And I was just bringing that around for maybe 2 years. While working on this company, I was working remotely, and we ended up having to, we're actually still in the process of potentially getting that company like a kind of acquired in a way, but we ended up, it was just tough to make the unit economics work on a personalized email when you're competing with essentially free on a mail merge. So I think it was, we still needed to develop some like machine learning aspect. So I ended up joining a tech company here in Venice called the Flex Company, which is funny because it's actually a feminine hygiene company. They make like a tampon alternative, which is wild. And I was leading the design team there, redesign their packaging, their website, but spent a lot of time on the subscription side. They had a pretty healthy subscription business. It was my first time working in subscription e-commerce, and I sort of fell in love with like that membership feel. So that's 2018 or 2017 and 2018. And I was working in this office environment full of coffee drinkers, and people like every day were coming up to me and like talking about how they're trying to give up their afternoon cup or give it up for Lent or like give it like quit coffee altogether. And I was just like, this is so interesting because everybody's drinking this stuff. Like 8 out of 10 Americans drink coffee, maybe 9. But I'm like, how many people have some similar sentiments that I used to have around it, where they're like, I don't know if it's the best thing for me, but I continue to drink it, even though it kind of like, maybe I should be doing something else.
Everyone.
But they just don't.
Everyone.
Yeah. And like either maybe they don't even know it yet, or maybe they kind of are seeing it, but there's no other options. And so in May of 2018, it was just like this undeniable urge for me to jump back into the startup space, but just do it on my own. And it was for the first time I felt like I had the skill set to really launch the business without the need of a developer, without the need of somebody on operations, or like I had never been CEO at that time. And I was like, I can do this, and grabbed my laptop, like no joke, over a weekend. I think it was like May 10th, something like that. And Saturday morning, had like kind of everything in my head already. Like I designed the brand, designed a little package label, ordered it on Vistaprint, went on Squarespace and coded like this custom Squarespace theme. Was just like having fun, but it was coming like free flowing, like everything. Like I didn't have to answer to anybody. I didn't have reports. Like it was just quick and getting it out there and just really designing it for myself. Like I felt like I was still just as much of a customer of my own product as any prospective customers that I was going for. So there was no like business model. Is this a good market? Like what color should I have it? It was literally all intuition, and it felt amazing. It felt for the first time like a business. It felt for the first time in business like it does when I'm painting like an art project. And ordered a bunch of ingredients on Amazon and put up an Instagram post that said, we're not mad at coffee, we're just disappointed, so we made something better. And it was like orders started coming in, and
how does how does this work with food? Is this something you can literally just start like chucking stuff together and selling it? Is there any sort of like, not FDA,
I mean, I'm
but
not, yeah. So the FDA regulates supplements in a different way than it does food.
Mm.
And, you know, I'm not like a spokesperson for it. Like I'm also ask for forgiveness later kind of approach. And
Mhm.
I was just like, I'm going to get it up there. Like if people start buying it, like I'll figure out a way to legitimize it. But at that time, I mean, I didn't have a nutrition facts panel, and I was making it, you know, in my kitchen, and
Mm.
shifted into a commercial kitchen and all that. And it was just like figuring, like jumping off the cliff and building the plane on the way down kind of a thing, like just figuring it out as I went. But yeah, I mean, if I was making a supplement, you'd really need to make sure you have all that dialed up
Mm.
right away. But I was just moving fast. And so, yeah, getting orders coming in and just figuring out as I went.
And if I recall, like it was a pretty quick response in the first like 3 months, right? Like it wasn't
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
feel like most people who did this, you know, if you got 10 orders, you'd be super stoked and excited. But
Yeah,
this wasn't that. Like it was a pretty quick first 3 months of actual orders coming in. Do I recall correct?
totally. Yeah. So it, it was quick. And I, I didn't tell my friends that I like, besides Paul, who was a previous co-founder, and brought him on as who's now our CEO or COO, and he's a co-founder on Mudwater. I like just told him, but I didn't tell any of my friends that I was launching it. And I just wanted to like see organically like what would happen. Like I took a very like lean startup approach. Like I was just putting it out there. I was reaching out to every customer who bought it, like emailing them, trying to get in touch, figuring things out, looking for signs of product market fit. But there was something about the approach of drawing the line in the sand around coffee, on Instagram, that just seemed to resonate
Mm.
like more than I ever would have imagined. And so I like the videos, and like I posted this video, and it was just like a spinning, rotating tin with the powder in it. And like it was, I boosted it on Facebook just to see what would happen. And we were getting like a $6 CAC on it. And it was just like, I had everything mapped out. I was monitoring from day one. I had a spreadsheet, and had a ton of different KPIs that I was just looking at week over week over week. I was just like immersed in this. Like it was insane. And I knew, just based on my own personal financial situation, like I didn't have a ton of savings. I was at that time probably in a little bit of debt. I knew I wanted to raise money, and being in the startup space, I knew to raise money, I really needed to paint like a beautiful picture, a beautiful
Mhm.
story. So it was like, once I start, like I'm beating those numbers every single month. And what's that growth curve going to look like? Like I'm not going to give any investors any friction on when they're looking at the business as far as like traction. So it
Well,
was,
and
go
what
ahead.
was the moment when it went from sort of being a kitchen, you know, formulation, hey, this is an
Mhm.
experiment, to being, oh wait, this is like, this can be a real company. I imagine it was actually pretty early.
Pretty early. Yeah. So we had a couple just random celebrities or like influencer type people start to get the product and post about it, like Kelly Slater, had a couple maybe smaller names, but like authors with amazing followings. And so within 6 months, we were doing six figures in monthly revenue.
Wow.
Um, and my it was nuts. I mean, I was working full time still, so I was working full time. I'd come home after work, and I'd jump in the kitchen, and I'd make, like, fill these buckets up with mud, and set those aside. Wake up the next morning, and I probably had 10 different friends of mine and their friends who are sort of on call, and they would come by in the morning. I'd go to work, and then I'd come home on my lunch break, and in that time, they would have put the mud water in the jars, put the jars in the boxes, put a label on it, and they'd fill up these trash bags, and I'd fill up my car with the trash bags, drive it to the post office, go back to work, and then do it all over again. And so that's kind of how we got to that 6 month mark of just like, by any means necessary, just figuring it out. And then at that 6 month mark, I was at this like inflection point where we were growing at a clip where I constantly needed to, like, if I wanted to continue the trajectory, it was like I needed to put more money down on the next month's inventory and ads and advertising and all of that. And I didn't really have that money. And so I needed to work, essentially. I needed to continue working, but I didn't have the time to actually get the stuff done that I needed to do to continue the business. So it was at this point where I was like, I could quit my job, but then I might not have the money to continue to grow, and I might have to shut down the business, or I can shut down the business because I can't fulfill orders. And that's when Paul DeJoe, who's an amazing human, and we co-founded Cavalry together, the previous company, and he was sort of like advising me through the early stages of Mudwater. And I remember this phone call where I like walked out on the beach in Venice, and I was just like almost in tears because I was just overwhelmed with like stress. Like I just had so much going on. And he's in a similar financial situation to me. He definitely had some money though, and he was like saving up to buy a house, and he's like, dude, these testimonials, what we're doing, the growth, it's too special. I'm going to write you a check for 25K. Like, you're not going to say anything about it, and you're going to quit your job tomorrow, and we're going to do this. And if you're not, then I'm not helping you anymore. It was just like, I couldn't even answer him, you know. It was just like, I didn't know what to do. And we hung up, and he texted me, check your bank account. And I told my CEO the next day, and transitioned out of that position. And we went off and raised just over 1.1 million from VCs in SF, New York, LA. Like a month later.
What was that experience like? You know, was it something that immediately resonated? Was it a slog? How was the pitch discussions? I imagine this was your first time going through it. Was it what you expected?
Yeah, it was my first time going through it, at least as like the CEO. I'd been through it at previous companies, and so I knew to expect like the worst, kind of. Like, I knew it could be a lot. I probably had 100 meetings over the course of like 60 days, and but I mean, we did a lot of things right on like our growth trajectory, and we had like previous connections through the startup world. We had one specific angel, his name's Zach Coleus, who played a huge role in that whole initial funding round. So I met with him early on, and he loved what we were doing. He loved the product more. He wasn't an investor in the CPG space, and so he needed a couple proof points. And so I ended up meeting with a bunch of CPG investors, and so they got like cross knowledge, and he got enough confidence to run like an amazing AngelList syndicate. And when he was in, then everybody was in. So yeah, it was just kind of like finding the right couple people, like the lead dominoes, it seemed, really helped. I mean, but you do have to have a ton of meetings, and even once the yeses come in, it's still like takes a while to get everything dialed in and perfect, and it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, I went back and read Zach's original memo, and it was funny because it was like he's like, this isn't something I normally invest in, and it's a little out of my wheelhouse, but on the private investing side, we talk a lot about on this podcast, you know, I'm a quant at heart, but on the private side, you know, the old school Peter Lynch method of investing, which is, you know, knowing, like, finding a product or service that you love and investing in it. And that was the case for me. You know, I mean, I was a consumer and said, wow, this is great, you know, plus all the business stuff lined up, but Zach's an easy convincer. All right. So you got a little bit of cash. What's next? Is it scaling up? Is it kind of buttoning down, starting to outsource the production, moving it out of your kitchen? Walk us forward. What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, at that point we were in a commercial kitchen, but still, like, I was mixing the product. Like, it was just insane. So we knew we wanted to find a co-packer, somebody who can make the product for us at scale. I was buying most of the ingredients on Amazon because, like, we needed the ingredients so fast. You got Prime next day, free shipping. Like, when you're shipping hundreds of pounds in like cacao, even if you go to, like, if you're kind of small and you go to like a supplier and you think you're getting a decent price on like a price per gram, like, when you factor in the shipping and everything, and like, it was just insane. And so I was still doing that. we moved into an office though. So we had a commercial kitchen, we had an office, and we were doing all of fulfillment in our office. We were doing the mixing in the commercial kitchen, and we just started the hunt for a co-packer and fulfillment center. The types of ingredients we were working with, two things: the types of ingredients we were working with, and then the packaging format of having that tin. It's a little tricky on the co-packer side. The co-packers want to just go in a bag. They want to like easy. They can put it on their machines. With the tin, it required a little bit of manual work with like a seal and whatnot. So it took us a while to find a co-packer that was open to that. And then once we found some that were open to that, it took us a while to find some that had like the consciousness around the ingredients that we were working with. Some didn't understand the differences, the variance in cacao, or they just didn't speak our language, and it was a huge concern. But we were always thinking that we were like 1 to 2 months out from having a co-packer. And so one thing in reflection was we never fully invested in like our own manufacturing process because of that. Like we were always like, just get through it. We got another month or so. Like I'm working till 4 a.m. at the kitchen covered in dust. And it ended up being closer to 9 months, 10 months from that point where we were still doing our own fulfillment. But we were in that time, I was able to hire a outsourced development team. I learned how to run Facebook ads, which was a huge win. So we brought on a marketing agency just because I was doing all the creative, obviously. Like I was doing all the design, and up until that point, I was running all of our ads, but really had no experience doing so. And maybe that was beneficial in a sense because we were doing things that people weren't necessarily doing. Like we were running copy that was really long and kind of like founder story style. Like it wasn't just like this really clean bite size. And I think anytime you can present something in a way that has some aesthetic beauty where you're like, I want to look at that, but then there's also a component of like friction where you're like, but what? Like it causes pause. It really helps to stand out. So I think that's one thing that we were doing it right at the time. That said, I was like, I'm sure somebody could do this better. And so I brought on an agency, and they worked with us for like 3 months, and it just didn't work. And it didn't work for reasons I wasn't even sure about at the time. I just wasn't well versed enough in Facebook ads that I felt like it was a huge liability, because it's a huge part of our initial business and our growth, and Facebook, Google, all these channels. Like if you can't speak the language and you hire somebody to do it, it's going to be really difficult to really manage them and to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So we ended up letting them go, and I just spent a month just learning the ins and outs of performance marketing on Facebook and Google, and got it to a point where we were doing really well, and scaled that up over the next year. And so like right when we raised that round, we were like, doing low 6 figures. And then fast forward a year from there, we pivoted our website to really serve the membership model. And we began acquiring like thousands of new subscribers every month at that time, which was amazing. And we grew it to maybe around 5 to 8,000 subscribers, and around this time last year. And we were at that time not profitable. We invested a lot in manufacturing, a lot in advertising, and we hired a small customer support team, and we ended up going out and raising another like proper seed round. So last year, it was just over $3 million. And from there, we hired a CTO, head of product. We hired a VP of operations, and then we hired 2 in-house customer support agents and a marketing coordinator.
It's interesting about the marketing side because it's always fascinating from a behavioral standpoint. I'm convinced in my head that I've never clicked on a Google ad in my entire life, but I've probably bought now 20 things off Instagram in the past year because of the targeting. But I'll tell you a funny story. I have a buddy who runs a company that does over 100 million in revenue in sort of investment research. And the way that they do some of their marketing is extremely long copy. And I remember sitting down with him and chatting over a beer or something. And I said, you know, this, and to me, I'm obviously not the target demo, but I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. Who reads this? This is so long. And he says, the buyers do, Meb. And so I said, it's funny because they spend enough time figuring out that in a certain, you know, approach that massively high conversions on these really long pieces that in my mind, I would never read, but plenty of people do. Anyway,
Yeah.
but it's funny, unless you make such a good point on all the ads, like unless you do some of the work of at least learning the syntax and diction of how that world works, it's hard to even know why something is working or not. And at least you can kind of speak their language. All right, so we're fall of 2019. Before we jump into 2020, which feels like a whole decade already, how much at this point is, you know, the formulation changed at all? I don't see any chunks in my coffee anymore. Has that been evolution like WD-40 style, or is it always just the one you set up and people loved it and you're no point in mucking around with it?
Yeah, it's definitely something we're exploring. We've never wanted to use any binders or like suspension additives. That said, thing like cacao isn't inherently water soluble, neither is cinnamon. And our mushrooms as well. They typically have like a little bit of suspension. And so at the end, you know, it gets a little muddy at the bottom. And
Mm-hmm.
some people don't care, some people do care for sure. And we're still trying to figure out where we stand on it as well. We are exploring like using some different extracts, like a turmeric root extract, or a blend of extracts for the mushrooms, just to get solubility down a bit. I don't mind being like raw in our, like, I think it's how I wanted it to be from the beginning. Like I didn't want to add a sweetener to the product, even though a lot of people might want it sweet. It's like I wanted it to be real, and I didn't want it to I guess stray from my own personal integrity around it, in order to appease the masses.
And do you guys think about adding additional products at any point? I know there's a creamer
Yeah,
involved. You got a frother as well.
yeah. So the way we're looking at that is, you know, we're obviously trying to like create a new category around like coffee alternatives that have more functional benefits than like grandma's tea bag. Um, and this is like our hero product right now. But and then around the hero product, we're learning about what our customers add to it. So the creamer was inspired by that. We found out that around 40 to 50% of customers were adding some sort of milk or creamer to their mud water in a similar way that a coffee drinker would. Some people like it black, some people like it with a little something. So we developed that, and then similarly, around 20 to 30% of people add a sweetener of some sort. So we're developing a sweetener right now that's a blend of coconut sugar and lucuma, which is it's a fruit that has really low glycemic index sugar content, but it has like a really nice, I think it pairs really well, like the type of sweetness to mud water. And so basically, like, we want to own the mug, like figure out what people would want to add to it and build vertically around this current hero, and then start to develop more vertical or more horizontal expansions where we do have a matcha blend right now. Like I'm actually drinking a little bit of it right now. It's formulated, and so it's similar to mud water in that it has all 4 mushrooms. It has a little bit of turmeric, a little bit of ginger. So it's like mud water's version of a matcha, ceremonial grade matcha. It's amazing if you need like a
Oh,
little extra lift.
well, if you need a taster, let me know. I've always
You like a,
struggled with matcha,
me too.
but people, it's super popular. I mean, right down the road from you at Abbot Kinney, I think there's
Chacha.
multiple
Yeah,
matcha shops or bars, whatever you
totally.
call them. but anyway, anything's better than the absolutely foul chai that Starbucks serves. My God.
The syrup. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's so sweet. Okay, so 2020 rolls around. You guys are cranking. Tell me how this year's been. I know it's been a lot of companies. It's been tough. It's been great for others in between. What's this year look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's obviously been a wild ride. I think we were sort of anti-fragile in a sense, and like built to survive this sort of thing or thrive even. Our whole team's remote. It's been remote since day one. So as far as like workflows go, processes, um, it's very little change on that end. So we didn't have to make any adjustments on our internal operations. Um, on the business side, 99% of our business is online direct to consumer through our website. We do have some smaller retail partners. We are launching, and we're going to be in Air One actually, probably by the time this podcast airs in LA. But we've been very focused on direct to consumer and very just sort of defensive on the retail side. So that's been beneficial, obviously, right? Like we weren't reliant on any wholesale orders. It's all just been like, if we think a cafe is cool and they reach out to us, we'll accommodate to date. So yeah, going into like full lockdown, we were pretty well positioned for that. And I think that what most saw that was like, if people still want to buy your product in that period of time, you're in a good spot because there's less people advertising and there's more people online shopping. So it was actually an amazing time for our business. That said, we didn't know that. We didn't know that at the beginning. We didn't know it was going to be like that, which ended up being beneficial for us as well, because I started thinking about, well, what if it's not the case? Like looking forward, what happens if things shut down? What happens if the economy shuts down? What happens if orders go to zero? So I started to focus a lot on content, and it really kickstarted a lot of initiatives that I was dreaming about since starting the company that had just never been prioritized quite yet, just because things were going well in other areas, I guess you could say. So some of the things we started doing at the beginning of COVID was we started leading a weekly breathwork class on our Instagram Live, which has been, so maybe backtrack. I've been really into like consciousness work, whether it's plant medicine work through to meditation, and more recently breath work. And breath work is a variety of things. Like most people will say that they've done some form of breath work, like in a yoga class or whatnot. But this breath work specifically is sort of a derivative off of, I guess, originally what's called Tumo. And now there's different formats, which like Wim Hof is one sort of branch of that. And then there's like holotropic breath work. But it's like this 3-stage, pretty intense breathing where you're getting these full inhales and exhales and doing it for long periods of time. And so I started doing that right at the beginning of starting Mudwater as like a way to manage stress, because the way I look at it, when you're launching a business, well, I look at my personal health like maybe in the same way as like a professional athlete would, and I think that's how it should be done, just because we're putting a lot of taxation on our minds, and we want to be creative. That's how we win. And so for me to be creative, like I really need to manage my sleep. I'm good about like shutting down the computer at a certain hour and like walking away and just allowing my mind to recover. And then I do a lot of things like meditation, journaling, and now breath work. And so breath work allows me to quickly get like a consciousness shift. And from there, it kind of enhances my meditations. So yeah,
How
we
often do you
started
guys do
doing,
that on Instagram? Is that consistent or is it
yeah, so
a
we've
minute?
done it every Friday at noon on our Instagram live since early March.
Cool. I'm going to tune in.
Oh, you should, man.
I could use I could use a little breath work.
It's
Um,
good.
and so has that, I am sure like the whole culture of the company is one of not just the product, but a mindset of health as well. Um, and does the actual content creation, have you found that's been, community building? Has it been that it
Yeah.
introduces a lot new consumers to the brand? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's definitely both. So not all of our attendees are Mudwater customers even. And I talk about, so I'm on the breathwork classes. It's me, and we have like a breathwork coach facilitator. And so I'm kind of like I'm like the student that they can watch and like see me mess up or whatever and feel good about feel better about whatever they're doing. But I do like an intro at the beginning, and I explain that really Mudwater at its core, like we're trying to bring about a better morning ritual. Like, of course, a product or like a drink could be a part of that, but it's also like the tools and the habits and the routines that we do in those mornings. And so we're trying to bring about some of those ideas to you. And so breath work is one of those options. And then on the other part of content, we launched I call it a content arm. It's like a blog right now, but I really want it to be a lot bigger, but it's called Trends with Benefits. And we have written video, and we have our own podcast even now. So we launched all these things, and we send out a weekly newsletter that is not self-serving, in that we don't really publish a lot of content that we create. We publish content that we just think is amazing. So we share podcasts that we're listening to, articles that we're reading, documentaries we're watching, and events we're hosting. So like breathwork. And yeah, it's been an amazing community building tool for us. We get feedback all the time. We just recently brought on a community manager because it's been growing so much. And so, yeah, without the like, I guess, fears around like what could happen with like something like COVID, we wouldn't have built that side of our business probably at that time, and probably not with that concerted of an effort. So it's been amazing, and it's still growing. Like we still have a ton of things that we're working on now with that.
Good. It's gonna be fun to watch. Talk to me a little bit about, this is like two California, LA guys rapping, but the culture of your shop, like any shop, is certainly made in the image of the people there, including the founder and CEO. You guys have some sort of interesting approaches. I don't know if you still do, what is it? No Internet Wednesdays. I don't, you also have some involvement with some charity organizations. Would love to hear about both, or kind of what makes the Mudwater story a little bit unique.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I was saying at the beginning, like at its core, when I started Mudwater, I was just taking like a inventory of my life and what I like, kind of letting go of what I didn't think was resonating, and taking in what I wanted, and maybe designing new things that I needed. And when I was starting the company, I took a very similar approach. I was looking at previous companies I worked at, and taking in things that I liked, but then looking at what we're building here as like a complete blank canvas, and trying different things that maybe were, exploratory. And so some of the interesting things that we do, it's a tricky thing too, because I have a lot of weird practices that I do, and I don't want to be like prescribing things to people, or like some guru type person. So it's a delicate thing to like deliver it in a way that's accessible, and really just letting people choose their own adventure in a sense. But so really what I try to do is just open up about what I do and like why I do it, and give them resources if they want to explore further. That said, we do a breathwork meditation before every Monday call. So we have like a Monday all hands. And I always noticed at previous companies, like just jumping into these meetings, that they involve the whole company. And you think about everybody, like it's an expensive meeting, like everybody's there, everybody's, should be engaged, but rarely were we, at previous companies. And I think part of that is creating like a divide from your day prior to the meeting, and then the meeting itself. And I think, some companies maybe do like an icebreaker type thing or whatever. But the more I'm learning about meditation and breath work is that you can alter your mental state and into a state that is advantageous for whatever you're working on. So maybe you want to be more alert and more like sympathetic and ready to fight. But then maybe you want to be more creative too. And so going into this meeting, we do a 10-minute guided meditation. I kind of guide the team through with the whole intention of bringing about that state of mind that is conducive to creativity and problem solving, and also like attention, right? Like separating from the day, bringing into that present moment, and hopefully making that meeting more valuable for everyone. So that's one thing. Yeah, like you were saying, on Wednesdays for about a year and 8 months now, I've been doing no food on Wednesdays. So it's like a 24-hour fast. For a while, I was doing no food, no phone, no meetings, but the no meetings part is just like impossible, man. Like it's so hard. So I do some meetings. I generally try to stay away from my phone, but I have been doing the no food thing, and it's really cool to have like some sort of hard ritual like that that breaks up your week. I found that it really brings about gratitude to my access to food. It brings about gratitude to eating in general. And it's just like a nice discipline test.
Yeah.
And then on Fridays, we do a gratitude call where we all go around and talk about things we're grateful for. We're constantly sharing different content around psychedelics, mental health. We've been donating to MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, since day one. They're, if you haven't heard about them, they're doing amazing work, really with MDMA therapy right now. So they're doing like they're creating therapeutic models for using these different compounds. FDA fast-tracked, I think, primarily in MDMA and psilocybin, but they really paved the way for a lot of other companies to start doing it, using other compounds. So it's like really one of the most important movements that I can think of, just because if you're like, as a society, if our mental health is in disarray, it's like that's just where it starts. Just leads to a cascade of bad decisions, and I think if we can really solve the root cause, or I think solving the root cause is really solving that issue, and they're showing a lot of promise there.
Yeah, MAP was in the news recently, and it's astonishing how quick the stigma, the walls are just crumbling around these areas of psychedelics, and I think it's becoming obvious to a lot of people the struggles of the modern world with technology, and certainly social. It's becoming apparent to everyone. The challenges, and mental health being something that people really need to pay attention to, as not just an afterthought, but a priority as well. I would love to keep you here for another 2 hours, but we'll just have to have you back. A few more questions before we start to wind down. First, you guys have had quite a run. 2020, I think last I heard, you're up over like 40,000 subscribers. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're right around 45,000 subscribers. In the subscription model, you get it. You can choose to get it every month, 2 months, 3 months, and you can get like 30 or 90 servings in those cadences.
Yeah, listeners, check it out. I'm not full mud yet. I'm like I'm balanced between mud and coffee,
curious.
but there's the days I wake up and my 3-year-old smashing me with a stuffed animal where I'm on the coffee day, and there's other days which end up being much more pleasant, where it's just like a beautiful, wonderful morning that's kind of eases into it with my water. But I'm not fully committed yet. I'm getting there. But listeners, check it out. As you look to the horizon, you've built this community. You're at a scale, it's accelerating to where things are, on the finance VC side, you've found the product market fit. On the culture and the community, you have something that people love. What's the future look like for you guys as you look out to the rest of 2020, 2021? What are you thinking about? What are you excited about? All that good stuff.
Man, I'm excited about a lot, obviously, but short term, we're developing a coffee detox program. So it could be the thing that could really help you out just to get right over the ledge. So it's specific. It's like a 45 to 60 day program with collateral and even other products that are going to be incorporated to help you manage your energy and kind of rethink your relationship to caffeine, which might mean that you still drink coffee here and there, but it's like you have a conscious control over it. Looking further out, we're really excited about launching new products. I mean, I've been like holding back on that. I've just seen too many times companies expand too quickly on their product assortment, and you start to dilute your marketing message. And I think that we still have a lot of runway with our current product, but I have 5 new products formulated here in the office that I'm playing with. I'll give you a little sneak peek. I talked about the matcha. We have a golden milk, which is like a turmeric, caffeine-free latte with all the mushrooms in it, and then a decaffeinated mud. So once you're at that next level, like mud water has 14 milligrams of caffeine today, which is 1/7 of a cup of coffee. We do have a chai rooibos version. So rooibos just swapping for the black tea, making it completely caffeine free. And then probably most excited about looking at this evening blend. So when I think about like the best morning ritual, it really starts the night before, like the day before, but the night before, like how are you resting? How are you recovering? A lot of times when you're reliant on caffeine, you're just playing catch up, really. Like you're waking up feeling tired because you didn't rest and recover. So the ultimate morning ritual is really like you drink an evening drink, have an amazing sleep, you wake up, have something that really helps with mood and focus and things in a way, but it's not a reliant drug like dependency. So on the product side, really excited there. And then on the content side, I just feel like we're still just right at the beginning, and every day I'm like developing my vision around what we look like years from now on the marketing end. And it all stems from our positioning as being a coffee alternative and looking at the other thing, like the complementary pieces to a coffee ritual, which is like when you look at it, there's like the morning paper and like the reading. And so when I look at our content strategy, it's very similar. It's just rethinking every aspect of that ritual, right? So we already have the coffee, the drink replaced. We're developing the creamer, the sweetener lines, and then it's around content. Like how do we rethink the paper? It doesn't have to be physical, but we're coming out with content that's not self-promoting in a direct way. We're coming out with amazing stories just about psychedelic experiences. I'm doing an art project where I'm interviewing homeless people, and that's going to be in our content series. Really looking at our content arm as like a media channel in the same way that Red Bull did, in a similar way that maybe Goop does, and positioning it as like a content arm. We have a team of advocates that we're building that span from professional athletes in like the surf, skate, snow world through to just amazing expressionist dancers, through to artists, authors, entrepreneurs even, and just building a team of amazing individuals who are of course exceptional at what they do, but more importantly, like do it in their own way. So aren't are operating outside the confines of like the cookie cutter, and featuring them and kind of like letting that community internally sort of start to just blossom into what our content vision is in the future. So yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. As we wind down, 2 more quick ones over this pretty exciting last couple years. What's been the most memorable moment? Anything come to mind? Good, bad, in between?
Let's see. So yeah, I mean, there's lots memorable moments for me. Like remembering going into the commercial kitchen was just insane. Like I've been driving a van for the past couple of years, mainly for my art career. And luckily I had that thing, but I would drive to the commercial kitchen at like 11 p.m. at night, packed full of like hundreds of pounds of powders, and go in there till the early morning. And the commercial kitchen people like did not like us because it's like this fine powder that's in the air, and so much so that we would build a tent, like a camping tent inside the commercial kitchen to like contain all the powder, like the dust, and bring in this like commercial mixer into the tent. And it's just like a tedious process where you're making like 40 units per 2-minute cycle, and you're just sitting around covered in dust, and I'm just like listening to podcasts. And I just remember like constantly reflecting on like, remember this moment, because I had people kind of telling me this, like, remember these like hard times because you're gonna miss them. And like it was dark times and hard times, but like such good times too. And me and Paul, my co-founder, would go in there and we would just be like dreading it but laughing at the same time. And it's just those like hurdles that you jump that just really I don't know, just like it makes you feel confident in the future in a way, once you get through it. And so I just love reflecting on those days. It's just insane.
Well, it's the, the agony and ecstasy of being an entrepreneur, but also just the journey of it. And you had a great quote in one of your interviews where you said something along the lines of being successful and the challenges of celebrating the wins and losses equally. And I think you said, I'm still a white belt at that. And we actually talk a lot about that with investing, because, people, when investing, when things going right, they're making money and they're thinking about vacations and the next house they're going to buy, and popping bottles at the club. They get so excited. On the flip side, this year is a perfect example. When things going south and everyone's losing money, use a different part of the brain, and trying to find a balance is one of the biggest challenges. It's hard, really hard to do, but being able to at least experience both of those, particularly in investing and in entrepreneurship, is part of what gets you to the finish line. Otherwise, it becomes impossible.
Totally. And I think as like in the startup space, it's almost the inverse of maybe the investors, where there's a lot of energy and attention and conscious thought around the failures and like the things going bad. And it's really hard to celebrate anything really. Cause like I was thinking about, like Paul and I were reflecting the other day, just like growth wise. And it's just like, when you plan ahead and you hit your numbers, it's not exciting, because then you're just thinking about next month. And then you like reflect like the last 6 months and you're like, whoa, that was insane. But like when you're in the moment, if you don't take that time to reflect, like you need to have, when I was saying that quote, it's like, I'm much more on the negative side. Like I'm always critical. And that could lead to burnout. And so like Paul and I are always checking ourselves on like, dude, go and dance for a little bit in your kitchen or whatever. Like just do something just to like symbolize like accomplishment here and there. Like dealing with imposter syndrome and all these things. It's just so common in the entrepreneurship space. And there's more coming out about like entrepreneurs and struggling with depression, anxiety, and even suicide. So it's really important to drive that home of like finding rituals and practices and awareness around small micro successes, and just looking for balance, like 50-50 or close to it, where you're like, definitely be critical on yourself, definitely focus on things that need to change and be better, but also make sure to celebrate.
I love it. Shane, last question. Where is the next offsite? You got it in the works? Where are you guys going to go?
So my co-founder planned this one. We're going to Arizona. Nothing too crazy, but his friend runs this retreat out there, and it's like a off the grid retreat. It actually is going to be really fun. We're going to go on a bunch of adventures.
Very cool.
But yeah, I'm still trying to get the team to Costa Rica. So as soon as that becomes doable, we're going there. Santa Teresa.
I'm going to hit you up for some itineraries. The farthest we've gone, I think, is like, we used to travel a ton, but as a team, because we're spread out over, I think the farthest we've gone is Terranea, which, listeners, is like it's like a local spot just to grab dinner on the cliffs. Still beautiful.
Sweet.
Shane, where do people go? They want to find out where they can buy some awesome, delicious mud chai. Where do they go? And then also they want to follow along with some of y'all's content. What y'all are up to? Where are the best spots?
Yeah. So if you want to get some awesome, delicious mud water, you can go to mudwater.com. It's MUDWTR.com. We like to post a lot of good content to our Instagram. It's drink mud water, same spelling. And then if you're looking for more, you can go to our blog. It's Trends with Benefits, but you can just go to our website, go to our menu, of benefits. We have articles written about nutrition, lifestyle, our ingredients, founder story stuff, but even psychedelics. So good stuff there.
Awesome. Shane, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure.